On today's edition of the San Francisco 49ers Report, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter, earlier this offseason, the Niners called the Minnesota Vikings about a Justin Jefferson trade. Stay tuned for that. That's story number one. And story number two, really it covers stories. We're taking your questions for a Niners mailbag. Looking forward to hearing from our loyal subscribers right here on the Niners Report. So according to Adam Schefter, as I mentioned, the Niners reached out to the Minnesota Vikings about a Justin Jefferson trade earlier this offseason. And it wasn't just the Niners for arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. The New York Jets, Indianapolis Colts also calling the Vikings. And Schefter did say that a trade never got close to materializing because obviously the Vikings value a player who's an alien at the wide receiver spot. And what ended up happening? They paid that alien. They paid that superstar. They paid their number one and one of the best overall players in the sport to a 4-year, $140 million contract extension. That set the record for the highest average annual value for a non-quarterback in the history of the NFL, overtaking Nick Bosa's previous mark at $34 million per year, as Justin Jefferson got $35 annually. And then it also set the record for the most guaranteed money on a contract for a non-quarterback, which also overtook Nick Bosa for that highest mark. Now, a lot of you are probably asking yourselves already, why would the 49ers think about this, entertain it? Why would they do something like this? A couple of reasons here. You check in on the price of a great player. What would it cost to trade for Justin Jefferson? The Niners made calls about Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins in previous off seasons. Those trades didn't come to fruition, but they traded for Christian McCaffrey. They traded for Chase Young. So you always want to explore and get that intel. What is the price of the player? You can also gauge what Jefferson is asking for in your conversations with Minnesota to help you as a team with your Brandon Aiyuk contract negotiations. Hey, Minnesota, what do you think that Jefferson is asking for? What's kind of the intel from the agent? 30, 35? We're really trying to cook up a price for Brandon Aiyuk. You can compare markets here between a top-tier wide receiver and then Aiyuk, who is closing in on that top tier, but is probably in that next tier. So for San Francisco, they're trying to cook up a price and maybe gathering that information. And then on top of that, Jefferson got $35 million per season. Brandon Aiyuk, I think now is in the market given some of the contract extensions that have been handed out to players at his position who he's either equal to, better than, or close to. He could demand $28 to $30 million per year. So if Justin Jefferson, in your eyes, is the much better player, and you think that he's a completely different player as far as the stratosphere goes, well, if you're San Francisco and Jefferson got $35 million per, and Aiyuk is going to ask for $30 million per year, are you just willing to pay and pony up $5 more million for a player who you might believe is significantly better? That's kind of the thought process I think that the Niners are coming from here. There's a lot of factors that go into these calls. And for Jefferson in his first 4 years, my goodness, he has been spectacular. Year one, bursts onto the scene after being a first-round pick out of LSU. And in 16 games, he has 88 catches, 1,400 yards, 15.9 yards per catch, and 7 touchdowns. Year two, 20 more catches, up to 108, 1,600 plus yards, and 10 touchdowns. In 2022, he increases the workload once again, up to 128 catches. So he's gone up by 20 catches his first 3 years in the NFL at this point. And then, of course, the yards go up to more than 1,800. And this past year, he only played 10 games. That's 7 games left. A lot of meat on the bone. In those 10 games, he still has nearly 70 grabs, still surpasses 1,000 yards with 5 touchdowns. That is crazy production. Now, for Brandon Aiyuk, it has not been equal production, right? But I'll explain why that is coming up here in just a moment. Year one for Aiyuk, I thought he had a really good rookie year for a team coming off a Super Bowl. He had to be the team's leading receiver with a lot of injuries occurring, and he played well. 60 catches, 748 yards, 5 touchdowns. Year two, he started off in the doghouse, got out of the doghouse, and had a really good year. Catches go down by 4, but he plays every game. Yards go up to 826, and he has 5 touchdowns. Then in 2022, his true breakout campaign, 78 catches, more than 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. And then last year, he emerged as a second-team All-Pro, 75 grabs, a career-high 1,342 yards. He was number 2 in yards per catch across the entire NFL, and then also had 7 touchdowns. Now, the reason why Aiyuk's numbers are not similar to Justin Jefferson and really not close, I don't think it comes down to there being just a massive gap as far as the talent gap goes, because I do believe, and I don't think that Aiyuk is on par with Jefferson, but he's still an elite wide receiver. If Aiyuk got the Justin Jefferson targets, I think he'd obviously have higher production, and his numbers would be a lot more, which is probably why he could use it to his defense in contract negotiations, that I deserve 30. Because if Amon-Ra St. Brown got 28, if Jefferson got 35, I can get 30 because with more targets, I could pop off. And with more targets the last 2 years, you've seen what I'm capable of doing as one of the best route runners in the NFL. Let me open it up to you. Who would you rather have at the wideout spot? Justin Jefferson, type JJ. Brandon Aiyuk, type BA. Now let's answer your questions and your super chats. Kelly, $10 super chat. Thoughts on the one and only CMC? You think he'll outdo himself next year? I have a hunch he'll shoot for MVP next year. So given the turnover rate of running backs having a difficult time of maintaining a level of play like McCaffrey has had the last 2 years, and the wear and tear that is included, and Kyle Shanahan saying we have to manage his carries a little bit more and also save Christian from himself because he never wants to come out. The Niners also saw when McCaffrey was banged up at the end of the year, he was worn down, wasn't the same player, didn't have that same juice. I think because of that, he gets less carries, he has less usage, and on top of that, the body might be a little bit beat up, so you want to manage him more. The numbers are going to go down a little bit. Now, the contract that he got, I still think very well worth it because he can contribute as a runner and as a pass catcher to an elite degree. But to be able to be better than last year when you're the offensive player of the year, top 5 in MVP voting, in a pass-happy era at running back, that's crazy. I mean, he ran for nearly 1,500 yards and 14 touchdowns. And then on top of that, he caught the ball 67 times for 564 for 7 more touchdowns. John Wallace, $24 super chat, San Francisco. Try not to worry and ask God to help me deal with fear these days. I hope you're all right, Johnny Dubs. We love you here on the show. So too does everybody else who watches the program. Listen, I feel some kind of way about the offensive line and keeping Brock Purdy upright. I'm just saying. John, I'm just saying that I agree with you, especially the right side of the offensive line. Now, at right guard, I do think that you have some good options. Can Spencer Burford take a leap in his development? We've seen bits and pieces of him being able to play well. I mean, he played every game but one as a rookie. And then last year, he got beat out by John Feliciano. But the talent level is there for Burford. You could also go with John Feliciano if you go with Jake Brendel or Drake Nugent or Ben Barch at center. You could also go with Dominic Pooney, the 3rd-round pick out of Kansas, at right guard. At right tackle, though, it seems like the only solution right now and the only player who is going to start there is Colton McKivitz. And we know what happened last year. He gave up 47 pressures, 12 more in the NFL playoffs. I think he's more of a backup offensive tackle in this league. Hopefully, he improves. If he doesn't, hopefully Brock Purdy does not get hurt. And hopefully offensive line for another year isn't the reason why the Niners can't reach the promised land. Timothy Johnson, a $50 super chat. My man, I appreciate that. If we can't keep Brandon Aiyuk, should we sign Odell Beckham Jr.? Timothy, I know a lot happens during the offseason. Some people step away, especially after a heartbreaking defeat in the Super Bowl like the Niners suffered. But in case you missed it, OBJ signed with the Miami Dolphins on a 1-year contract. Jermaine Minity, do you think that Aiyuk re-signs anytime soon? Jermaine, thanks for the question, my man. You think about when the Niners have signed their own players to extensions, it's always late July. It's at some point in August. In the case of Nick Bosa, that didn't happen until September because that was a big standoff with a lot of money at play. I think Aiyuk gets taken care of. The Niners have $32 million in cap space right now, and he signs that deal right around the start date of training camp at the end of July. Chua, how can the run defense get better? Stop the run, and should we stop using the wide 9? How about Chua showing everybody that he knows ball? Look, I think that's a reason why the Niners let go of Steve Wilks. They were one of the best teams against the run by almost every single metric under DeMeco Ryans in 2022. And then in 2023, they fell off a cliff. They were bottom 3rd in a lot of metrics against the run. And Nick Sorensen is a player who understands the foundational elements of this Niners defense that they have preferred to run, whereas Steve Wilks had to come in and ditch his defense, but then add elements of it to what the Niners had already done. So Nick Sorensen came up under Pete Carroll. This Niners defense is kind of foundationally including a lot of elements of that Legion of Boom type of defense. And naturally, does that allow you to be better against the run? They also changed the personnel at the defensive line spot, bringing in some new faces and players, starting-wise and depth-wise, who can help you get better there. As for the wide 9, it's a controversial front. There's no doubt about it. And the Niners do like to use that from time to time. When you spread out your defensive linemen, it naturally opens up running lanes. The Niners are confident that they can continue to do that because they have such a great linebacking core and have had such a great linebacking core. Do you close it in a little bit? Maybe a little bit more, but the Niners have certainly done that a little bit from time to time. Foxy Steady, Chase, what is the news on a Talanoa Hufanga return? Good question. So he said that he is aiming to be back for week 1. And he's not going to rush to try to be back for training camp or anything like that. He's going to aim to be back week 1. He's been working out on the side field. Recovery is going well for the first team All-Pro from the 2022 season. And keep in mind, when he got hurt, he played 10 games last year. So it was later on in the year. I know that medical advancements have led to players coming off of ACL and Achilles injuries a lot faster than they did when I was growing up, and even as early as 5 years ago, but he's got to take his time. Jonathan Lamont Page, what's good, Brody? Could Ricky Pearsall be the new, younger, and cheaper Deebo? Is he built to be a yak machine? Your thoughts? So there are similarities with how you can use him. Jet sweeps, end arounds, reverses, bubble screens, return threat. Those are all things that Deebo can do and has done. As far as body type, Ricky Pearsall is 190 pounds. Deebo Samuel is 220. Part of the reason why Deebo is one of one, so unique, and one of the more dynamic weapons that we've ever seen in the history of football, eye test does not lie to you, is because of the physicality combined with the speed, making people miss, short area quickness, strong lower half, the ability to play outside, inside wide receiver, and play running back. Ricky Pearsall simply is not built like Deebo from a yak standpoint and isn't physical. Now, he has a good vertical leap. He can climb the ladder and get it. He can take a hit. He can pick up yards after the catch, making people miss in a phone booth, but it's not physically overwhelming and dominant like Deebo. Salty, my prediction, the Niners trade Brandon Aiyuk in a 3rd-round pick in 2025 to the Bengals for T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson. Here's my response to that. You would trade Aiyuk because you don't want to pay him. But then you're going to have to turn around and pay T. Higgins, who's looking for a new deal, And then Trey Hendrickson, like T. Higgins, also requested a trade because he wanted a new deal. So you're trading one player who wants a new deal. You don't want to pay him, but then you're going to have to pay T. Higgins and Hendrickson. You're not going to bring in those players just to go all in and to let them walk. Now, you do get the third-round pick on top of that in 2025, but why not just pay Brandon Aiyuk at that point? That's my response. But I like how you hopped in your NFL general manager bag. Alberto Soto. What up, Chase? Love your content. But what if Deebo balls out this year due to it being a contract year and they sign BA next week? What happens? So Deebo is not in a contract year this year. I do think that Deebo has something to prove this year because he signed that huge deal. And since then, he's either been injured, production has been down, not the same player, out of shape, struggled in the Super Bowl, lack of hustle issues from time to time, and then he was involved in trade conversations, which he confirmed did happen. He said, I spoke with my agent, it was a thing. People came at me for talking about those trade rumors, but whatever. Bad week for the haters. But with Deebo, I think he's just proved, or he's motivated to prove people wrong this year. To prove that he's legit, that he can get back to that all-pro form that earned him the bag in 2021. Now, if BA signs a new deal and he balls out and Deebo struggles, even if Deebo plays really well, I've continued to say, the Niners could look to trade away Deebo Samuel next offseason. Imagine Prod, if Aiyuk and Deebo were traded, how would you feel and what offers would you predict for them? For Aiyuk, I'm still asking for a first-round pick, at the very least a second. If Deebo were traded, I'd ask for a third just because he hasn't been the same productive and available player as Aiyuk, and you're going to have to pay him with some injury concerns. And how long does Deebo last given his playing style? How would I feel? I'd be angry. I'd be frustrated because this Niners team still has an opportunity to win a Super Bowl, and I've said I think they should go all in that pursuit of that sixth ring. Trace Lucero, is the Justin Jefferson singing song. Hold on. Let's try to decipher this one. Is the Justin Jefferson sing-a-song that one of our wide receivers will be traded? Well, I talked about the Justin Jefferson trade to start this segment. I think it was them doing a couple of things that I noted, right? Trying to see what the asking price is to help him out with Aiyuk negotiations. What is the asking price for arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL? I don't think it's a sign that a wide receiver will be traded. So there you go, Trace. Thanks for that question. Make sure you subscribe to us here on the 49ers Report. Daily, year-round coverage of the Niners. Bang, bang, Niner gang. Hope you're all having a great weekend.